Gabriel, thank you so much for attending this session. Mr. Diplomat, always good to see you. Ted Baker, you're the man. All right, everybody, we're going to get started here. I'm going to kindly ask you to try to keep the chatter down a little bit. We don't want Irene to kick us out of Greek House. She's been too kind as it is. Irene, we love you. Thank you for offering Greek House home to all of us non-Greeks. I feel like I've become Greek over the past couple days. So now we're going to have a conversation on innovation and sustainability in global business. How many people here do business globally? Now, their hands that aren't up, I would say, well, don't you meet people from different parts of the world? Aren't you a brand? Don't relationships matter? Well, that is in itself some form of global business. Tourism, Greece, well, Greece speaks for itself. It is a unique country with history. And wellness is something that began with some of the greatest physicians that this world has ever known. So with that, I would like to start introducing our esteemed panelists. To tell us a little bit about themselves, and then we're going to dive into innovation. What is happening right now, and then on the technology front, diving into it, and ultimately, we're going to go into the global business with Mr. Clayton as well. So, Dr. Christina Rahm, would you share with us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name's Dr. Christina Rahm. I think I've seen most of the people here today or during this week at some point. I am a scientist, nanobiotechnologist. I've worked in 89 countries, opened 300 businesses. I like to bring innovation and solutions to different governments and businesses throughout the world.
So I'm Clayton Thomas. I'm the founder of the Root Brands, which is a social sharing algorithmic fintech ecosystem built on the premise of the connectivity of humanity now that we're already all connected, and putting a focus into consumers creating value for companies. And the foundation of what we've created was actually based upon the initial creations of Dr. Rahm. So there's a collaborative relationship here.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
and aren't you both married on top of it?
Yes.
What is that like, Clay, to be married to a rock star?
I can't talk too much about it. What you see on the outside is not as good as what's on the inside. But having the insight into when we look at sustainability and innovation, the true innovations that we're going to see in science and technology and healthcare actually is going to come from my left. So just so you guys understand what she's already done scientifically, probably won't be completely understood for at least the next 5 to 10 years. But when we look at the importance of longevity and the reversal of aging, she already holds a patent on it. So, the X Prize that was discussed a couple weeks ago, that the focus of $100 million that they're putting into the reversal of aging, that's already done. So you're sitting in the presence of one of the scientific leaders that is going to become more prominent over the next 5 to 10 years. But this is an opportunity to do some really cool stuff.
So I like
she won't
that.
say anything like that about me.
So there's a quote by Admiral McRaven, and it goes that to start each day with a task completed, to find someone to help you through life. And that at some point you have to realize life's not fair. And you're going to need to take risk, and you need to step up when the times are toughest. And sometimes you even need to face down your bullies. But if you do this, then this generation and the generations that follow will live in a world better than the one we have today. Dr. Rahm, the day I met you, that quote was in my head because you are someone that every day lives by that principle. I start each day with a task completed. So talk about this journey for you through science, through medicine, through entrepreneurship. How do you prioritize your business? How do you prioritize your day?
So for me, I make a list every year. I have since I was in 3rd grade. I start every year by having my goals that I'm going to accomplish. And we're in 76 countries right now with the Root Brands and DRC Ventures. We're going into 80, so of course that includes a long list. I have 4 children, but I was 26 and had cancer and lost a child, and that really made me understand how important humankind was and how valuable my life is, just like everyone in this room. There's only one person that can accomplish the goals that we can each accomplish, and so if we don't, then we failed. And so every day I get up and try to be the best person possible. I try to accomplish not just the list of what I set for the year before, scientifically, professionally, personally, but I also try to accomplish the list I make that night. So before I go to bed, I always make a mental list and I write down a list of what I have to do the next day. It takes a lot of dedication and commitment to understand how important each day is in this world. But when you go through things that include almost dying, you do understand this. And so I think that was a gift that I have. It's a gift I take with me. And I hope that everybody in the room understands how important their life is. Some people are scientists, some people are mothers, fathers, diplomats. Each of our jobs are equally important, in my opinion.
So I appreciate that. You know, this word sustainability can mean many things in many different industries. I know Ted and I were talking about it. My spouse and I were talking about it regarding scheduling and traveling and innovation. That is it sustainable? And how do we create something that is sustainable that we don't burn out? You know, people create goals each year. I'm going to do these things, and well, after a month, they stop going to the gym because it wasn't sustainable. So how do you create a roadmap, either through the environment or through science or technology, as something that isn't going to ultimately fail, that will be here for generations to come? Because what I've learned about you, Dr. Rahm, it is about legacy. It's about your heirs.
Well, I've written a lot of patents in our country and other countries because I do need a blueprint, a roadmap of what I need to do, and you do need to make it sustainable. Our environment, the people, the planet, the animals that are here, they're so important. So I focus on making the environment inside of me sustainable first and the best it can be first. And what I mean by that is we all have been impacted by heavy metals and toxins in our environment that go into our body. Those cause epigenetics, which cause diseases, cause autoimmune disorders. So I do focus on myself. That's part of my blueprint of my life. And then I focus on each individual that I meet along with the whole sustainability, of the environment and people. And it is a lot to do. So I know that we can become overwhelmed by that. So one of the things I think that I really have been able to accomplish is not getting overwhelmed and taking this step-by-step approach of greeting each day, every morning with what I have to accomplish and making sure that I get it done.
Thank you, Dr. Rahm. Heading over to you, Clayton. You are a very successful businessman, and you run a global business. There's a lot of challenges, but it seems that you've found this way to work through those challenges to find opportunities. So talk about your process and the countries you're working in.
You know, the process in the world that we live in today, with how consumerism has been reconstructed, right? I think the old pathways of direct-to-consumer sales and retail sales have shifted. You know, we can go back 4 years ago from the introduction of a lockdown that really forced a lot of behavior to become online. But with the social networks over the last 20 years, consumers have all become connected, right? So if as a business, you're going to invest into your consumer base, which is what we did. We built an algorithmic fintech model tracking social sharing. So it was our customers that dictated where we've gone. And we took a concept in February of 2020 that some people thought was crazy, especially given the timing. But in 30 days, we were providing products into 27 countries. And it wasn't something that we did directly. It was directly due to the outcomes of the products that our customer base had and where their relationships were. So it created a very unique business environment where you're actually chasing the business. In some aspects, you're going to dictate where you want to provide service and where you logistically want to make sure that you're meeting needs. But as you go now, your customer base, if you're providing great value, whether you have a service or if you're providing a product, the customer base will actually dictate where it can take you if you take it properly. So it provides a unique opportunity. And really the last 4 years of what we've seen of many aspects that are beyond our control: logistics, manufacturing, product sourcing, and even just managing customers, managing relationships. Things have changed so significantly that we live in an environment that you actually can't look back at history and cross-reference what's gone on to get an idea of what's going to happen, because everything has shifted. So you actually have to look at ways to innovate. And if you don't, you're not going to exist in this environment. But if you do, it creates a really unique opportunity to have a lot of fun.
Well, it sounds like, though, you have this way of developing then your KPIs, because this matters. I think many people don't know really what they want, or they know what they want, or they think they do, but they don't really have a recipe to get there. So you've been building some sort of KPIs and listening to your customers.
Yeah, the KPI aspect, I think, that is so important as an individual. If you're just looking at it as a human in general, or if you're looking at it as a company, as Dr. Rahm was talking about, her goals for the year are done at the end of the previous year and saying, okay, I want to map these things out, and this is how I'm going to track my performance. This is how I'm going to track my outcomes. I think the important part is if you're just an individual, picking out the measurements that you want. People will look at their weight, but as we've seen with the improvements in technology, you can look at heart rate variability analytics and understand how you're sleeping, or how your autonomic nervous system is functioning, or all of these different measurements. What your exercise looks like, what's your speed, your reaction time, your quickness. If we're looking at sports performance, all of these different measurements, and as you apply those into business, if you can't track it and you can't measure it, you don't have a clue. And the beautiful part now is with the advancements in complex algorithms and the access to data and information that we have now, it's unlike any other time in history, to where you can really innately dial in on areas of focus and to get an idea of how to predict markets, but also move into other areas and limit risk or identify risk, and have an idea of what your profitability is, how your function's going to be, and where you want to go next. And then we'll probably get into the AI conversation of how you can use technology to really get an idea of analyzing humanity and behavior, and how you can use that to adapt in markets.
Dr. Rahm, heading over to you. Obesity in the United States is continually rising, and globally it is as well. What do you contribute that to?
I contribute it to the environment. There's GMOs all around us. The United States has more than any other country to some, in a lot of viewpoints. And then we just don't take care of ourselves. But it's been a growing problem. We're eating the wrong things. We're putting the wrong things in our body. We're not protecting our environment. That impacts us. Whatever happens to a mother is actually impacted from future generations, and then she impacts her children. Up to 80% of all heavy metals and toxins are passed on to the child, and then the child has those and holds on to things in their cells that imprint upon them. And this causes issues like autoimmune disorders and genetic problems, including obesity. They think 78 to 80% of the problems with obesity has to do with the environment. And I'm not a person that talks about global warming a lot.
Now, are we talking about the environment as an outsider? Could it also be another environment of the people that are around you?
It's the environment outside, but what people do around you impacts you. Like, we know now as scientists that our cells talk. We talk about AI and how brilliant it is, but we used to think that people that understood what other people were thinking, that were used by like intelligence organizations, that they had a secret gift or something, and they did. We know now that some people are more evolved and they can communicate with people or understand what they're thinking without that person telling them. And this is a phenomenon that we realize now as scientists. We can put people under a machine, and that machine can tell us how that person's thinking, what they're feeling. We can put a device in our ear and go into a room and understand, not just because of the AI in the device, but because of our brains, what other people are thinking, or their languages. I think it's phenomenal how the human species, how we are and how we think. I think what we don't understand is we haven't tapped into anything that we really can control on who we are. We're so focused on AI, which I believe in AI, but I believe in us more. We are brilliant human beings, and so we have to focus, and I say this all the time to my 4 children, to Clayton, to my business partners. We have to focus on what our goals are, what our visions are. We have to think about it visually and believe it. And I think that's been the secret, not that I've been successful, but it's been the secret to my life, is really focusing on what I'm going to accomplish, who I'm going to be around, so the environment inside of me is not toxic. If your environment inside you is toxic, it leads to things like diabetes, obesity. It leads to death. So if you want to live a long life, you really have to choose who you're going to be around, what you're going to do, and then what you're going to envision yourself so you can accomplish the best version. We're worried about programming AI. We need to worry about programming ourselves.
So I heard you speak earlier on biology hacking or biohacking, and you were discussing natural remedies, things like the earth has given us. Talk about your process of deciding what should go into some of your products. And most recently, I know you put out something to help people that are struggling to lose weight.
So we launched a product called Sculpt. We launched it, and within an hour, we sold 2,300 units because we launched it on my Instagram, which shows you the impact of social media. I think we're sold out now in Europe, unfortunately, because we're getting ready to go to Zurich, and then we're going to Bucharest. We've been on a tour. I think my partners would have to tell me we sold out in, I think, 3 or 4 days, 3 hours, sorry. And we thought that would last 3 to 6 months. And then I focused on that because I really understood that if you can impact obesity and if you can help people with their inside environment, that you can biohack the system and help even more. Because once you lose weight, you're able to control a lot of other variables. So it was important to me. As a scientist that did the formulations at the Root brands, I started with detoxification. My patents were approved for regeneration and reversal of aging of the skin, hair, and nails, along with the air, the water, and the environment. That was extremely important to me because if you can detox and biohack into the environment as well as our personal environment, you can determine really how your life is going to be to a greater extent. So biohacking for me, using natural substances instead of synthetics, leaves less trash. So what do I mean by that? We have all this trash in our body. We have to take it out. When you take a pharmaceutical and a biotech product, there's nothing wrong with that. I worked in the biotech and pharma industry. I feel like that industry saves billions of people. You know, every year we're impacting millions of people. But if you can naturally prevent illnesses by detoxing and then supplementing your body, you do much better. So I focus on natural ingredients that I source all over the world. I think that's another reason the company has grown so quickly. We don't go into environments and countries and just ask the country to bring us in. We try to tap into what they need and how we can help them, and how we can bring financial gain to them as well. So it's a mutual partnership. And that involves biohacking ourselves, our bodies, and our company to be the best we can be, along with working with groups that are interested in doing this. Biohacking, to me, is something we should be doing every day. We need to naturally find solutions to our body. When I use that word biohacking, yes, I've been involved in cloning. Yes, I've been involved in bioprinting. You can bioprint the brain. But if we can naturally start by really helping our bodies, we can do so many more things than if we don't start with the natural approach.
I think it's interesting. I'm going to head over to you now, Clayton, is that people will spend hundreds of hours of watching their favorite TV shows. They'll spend day after day after day making sure they don't miss something on Netflix or Apple or iTunes or podcast. Yet they never take the time to write down, these are the things about me I want to get to know. I want to get to know why my brain is foggy. I want to get to know why I'm sluggish. I want to get to know why my knee's aching. That they seem to just keep putting things off. And isn't the definition of insanity doing the same thing over and over, but expecting something to be different?
There's an industry built on that, you know, of delaying symptoms, but allowing the progression of the underlying causes to persist. It's the entire medical establishment as it's been built. I think we have well, I can speak for the United States because the difference we've seen from Europe and other continents from the United States is a great disparity in that where outside of the United States, people put a greater focus on their health. There's a greater level of responsibility that culturally has been developed. And I think part of it goes to the depth of history. And the ambassador and I were talking is you look at cultures in Europe and you say, oh, well, they go back, 8,000 years. Or you can look at buildings around here that have histories of, being built 500 years ago or 700 years ago, where you go to the United States, and if it's over 50 years old, you're like, this is old, right? So the mentality in the United States is predicated on what you're being fed. And as Dr. Rahm had gone over, we have a society that's been poisoned to the point of being docile and controllable through multiple aspects, from the food, from what's in you, what's been passed on through 5 generations, and the process of having access to information and being redirected from areas that you might want to put a focus in to take care of yourself to say, oh, just watch this, it's entertaining. And I think the big part is, we now have a society because of social media that we're getting away from our core of understanding that we are each unique, we are each intelligently designed, right? And as Christina wrote in her first book, in Cure the Causes, that we're each an imperfect piece to a perfect puzzle, which is one of my favorite quotes of all time because it really explains humanity as far as what we are and our impact. That you don't need to be like someone else, right? You don't need to follow people on social media and say, oh, I want to be like a Kardashian. I want to be like this other person. What you have to understand is that you are unique. You have a specific purpose for what you're here for. And if you don't work on yourself, as you're talking about, the entire puzzle, the entire network is not going to be properly connected. And I think once we start learning from this, and it is looking at like the 100 monkey theory, where the collective consciousness starts to increase a little bit, that people will begin to realize, wait, I don't need to waste my time over here. I can actually focus on myself. And once you do that, you're going to see everything start to lift up a little bit.
So I had this incredible panel the other day with Dr. Barbara. She specializes in helping moms and dads not have to keep going through the pain of losing a child. And she told me that by the age of 30, one out of every four? 1 out of 4 will have a miscarriage. Yeah. And that those numbers are somehow, they continue to rise. And that there is something happening in the environment, there is something happening in our own bodies, that this is something that is going to just get worse. Yep. Now, she is one incredible voice in the world, and Dr. Rahm, I know you are on a mission as well to get people to wake up. Because if we don't stand up, who will? So talk about natural remedies in the body, because most people only rely on what the doctor's going to write me. You know, that prescription note, we don't know what's on it or what it says. But that natural remedies are there. And Dr. Barbara, you also told me as well that there are natural remedies for the body that can cure this, to prevent moms and dads and aunts and uncles. Data backs it, that we know we can improve outcomes. So why do we still keep focusing on the doctor's note as opposed to looking to the earth?
You know, I think we all want someone to tell us what to do with our bodies or our lives. I really do. Yeah, I think we all do. I mean, I ask people's advice, but now I try to go with my own advice. And I'll say this. When I started out doing formulations for the Root brands, I wasn't anticipating creating products that could make people be able to have children or not miscarry. But what happened is we gathered data because we have a patient registry in 76 countries. So we collect data all over the world. What we started finding from the doctors and the patients were that people that could never get pregnant were getting pregnant. People that were continuously miscarrying were miscarrying, and then we would start traveling, and literally people would hug me, tell me they love me, and give me credit for that. And it wasn't me that did that. It was the fact that I created products that help clean the inside of the body and then support the body to be the natural miracle that they are by cleaning things out and supporting the immune system, supporting the DNA, so it no longer wanted to get rid of a baby, but support what was inside. I can tell you that they now call them root babies, and I can't claim to cure anything. I can't claim to fix any illness. I don't think doctors are gods. I think they're people. I think there's only one God. That's just my personal opinion. And so I think that these natural things that are here so we can pay attention to help our bodies cure the cause of why we're sick. So all of a sudden, we started looking at the data, and there were people, especially all over Europe, that were using a detox cleaning product and then a support product, Restore, Zero In. All of a sudden, their lives were becoming better. We try to be very careful. We're not competing with the pharmaceutical industry. I worked for them for 15 years. Instead, we really want to show people what they can naturally do. When you go to a doctor, they tell you what you should do with your body. I say this constantly. Your body, you own it, you govern it, you're the president of your body. You're the queen or king of your body. You should listen to yourself and to what happens. You should not listen to an expert that gives you an opinion that's not always accurate. You are your best doctor. So that's my answer to that. I still think people want someone else.
I love that, because that's ultimately like a new you, a new mindset. Yeah. It starts with you owning it. Yes. Clayton, you want to join?
Well, I think the fun part, when we look at pharmacology, right, and how it's changed, and how, you know, the use of synthetics and the pharmaceutical industry has been able to create a dictation. But, you know, if you're a consumer, most people forget that you can actually go back to the original pharmacist, right? That we were created from intelligent design, and everything around us, everything in the environment, everything that we live amongst is actually designed and created for our benefit. But the unique aspect is what's been created, it is designed for our use at the time where it's of greatest need. And it's the interesting aspect of how we work with our environment, because as one thing Christina goes over is that, genetically, we are aligned with every plant, every animal, every other piece of the environment, that we are connected with our environment. And when you start to look at some of the ailments or issues that we have, and you can see this in Native American cultures, which is a lot of what's lost here in the United States, but I think globally as well, that if you're in the wild and you get poison ivy, you walk and you rub yourself on poison ivy, very close to the poison ivy is a fern that if you rub the fern on your skin, it's actually going to resolve the issues that you got from the poison ivy. You go, oh, well, that's not science. And growing up in a veterinary practice, it was very integrative when my father started using Chinese herbs as means of work and treatment for animals. And my dad learned early on that there's two things that affect animal health: diet and environment. But when they started to incorporate Chinese herbs, he was asking the master herbalist that was helping with him, okay, why do you use this combination of herbs in this circumstance? And she looked at him and she's like, well, because my grandfather's grandfather's grandfather did it this way. You think, well, if the outcomes are consistent and that combination continues to work and you've done it for 7, 8 generations, I think that's a good deal. And you think how many years 8 generations is compared to 90 to 100 years of pharmacology, and trying to take some aspects of what nature has created, synthesizing those into something synthetic that can be patented and then sold and distributed for the financial benefit. When if you look at what nature has provided, and this is the unique part when we look at innovation, if you have the level of science and technological acumen that you can learn in biotech, and then you take that science into nature and saying, I'm not going to change what's given, but I'm going to source it properly, and I'm going to find the best ingredients, and then start combining them, you can do something really unique. And that's what she's done, is taking what nature's provided and the greatest advancements in science and blend them versus trying to take what nature has provided and synthesize it. That's the component. We are here now to use nature in its best forms to help us evolve. And if we don't, we will devolve, because we are at a very interesting point in humanity. We are in the midst of an extinction event. We're 3 generations away from being extinct at this point, based on what's happening with birth rates and everything else. So we either make changes to evolve and improve, or somebody's going to get to start over.
So when we start to change our mindset to live a healthier lifestyle, getting to learn about ourselves, ultimately it should create some sort of new productivity. And they say activity creates activity, which ultimately then would spur the economy around the world. It would create tourism. People would feel good about going to the beach. People would be excited to go on the ski slopes. They would be out there feeling their best. So as we now go to the final 3 minutes, Dr. Rahm, talk about those that are on the sidelines. They simply don't know what to do next. They hear you, and they're saying, Clayton, Rahm, I agree. What's the first step?
I think the first step of what we've done, Clayton, Ted, and myself, and Dustin, you've been part of our amazing journey as well. We create partnerships with people around us. We use our network to spiritually, emotionally, mentally, physically, psychologically really create this dynamic where our cells are talking in a positive way. We're making positive changes. We hold each other accountable. The company that Clayton created is much more than a company that just sells products. It's a fintech system that has embedded in it a community that has 3 to 4 weekly calls, about our environment, about our lives, really motivating people to be their best, and then they motivate each other. I think that's one of the most important things. believe in yourself. If you have to look at yourself in the mirror each day and tell yourself you love yourself, do that. And then surround yourself with this network that you can make these amazing changes. I think that's the difference in why this company made it and grew so quickly and continues to grow. It wasn't one product. It wasn't one story. It was a combination of people with a shared mission. They don't want to die. They want to evolve. They want to be the best versions of themselves. And so that's who we surround ourselves with. And I encourage everyone to do the same thing.
So, Clayton, talk to those out there, the entrepreneurs, or those that are looking to make these changes, and maybe they just don't have the budget for it. They think it's too expensive because they read something online that they got to go into these cryo tanks, and this is the only way to fix themselves. But you've told me it's simpler than that.
It's the beautiful part with simplicity is making something simple is usually extremely complex. And if you're an entrepreneur and you've created something, you understand the premise of that. The key sign of genius is to take something very complex and simplify it. So a fifth grader can understand it. But where we are now, I think the ability to understand that if you look at the basics, right, and getting back to the understanding that what was published and proven back in the 1970s that almost all 80 to 90% of all chronic degenerative diseases have one etiology, one primary cause, which is toxicity. And that toxicity of environmental, whether it's heavy metals or different environmental toxins, affects not just your physical health, but your spiritual, your mental, and emotional, that they're all connected. That if you start to clean up the mess, and you can look at this as your house, right? You can look at this as if you're the mayor of a city or a country, and maybe if you're the United States and you don't have a southern border, and all of these, you have these invaders going into your environment. If they're just bringing a bunch of trash, and no one looks to clean up the trash, you're going to have your environment overrun, and it's going to be destroyed over time, right? And if you don't clean your house, you don't take the trash out over couple days, a couple weeks, you're going to realize that things don't smell right. You're probably going to have different issues. You're going to have a vermin infestation, and it becomes an environment that you don't want to live in. Well, this same problem is what exists in us. We don't start with a clean environment. As Christina had hit on, we're poisoned from conception. And the point that Dustin, you were hitting on with miscarriages, the miscarriage rates are so high because women are so toxic, they kill the fetus. And that's a hard lesson to accept. That your environment is so polluted that you're not capable of creating life if you're a woman. That's hard. And that's a fact, right? So when we look at that internally, but then we look at it environmentally, then knowing our toxicity is also what's creating the environment around us. When we look at all of these societal issues, we look at mental health issues, we look at crime issues, it all comes back to the individual. So you have to address those. But I think from a business standpoint, the ability to create the talk of private-public partnerships, right? That if companies do have the ability to create value, and they've proven it scientifically, if we're looking at a health standpoint, that a private company could go to the public sector or a government, like what Christina's done, to say, look, here's the science, here's what we've done. And if you have a financial mechanism that you can use in collaboration with the government, you can have people that would pay for what they're going to get personally, which revenue can actually go help fund government programs. But the key thing in this is understanding also what we've created from a mechanism is understanding human nature. We are all of great value. We might not all have means financially to do the things we need to, but we are all of value. And having a mechanism that allows people to realize that they are of value through their social network and who they're connected to. They might be introduced to somebody or something that they find is of value to them. They might not be able to afford it initially because a product is expensive or a service is expensive. But if you have a model that allows them to share with their friends and they're rewarded for it because it's their behavior that's creating the value for the company should invest in their creation of value to reward them, which would allow them the means to acquire what they've wanted because they're creating value for you. And it's force magnification. And we've seen it, right? Going from 0 in February of 2020 to now over 200,000 customers. And we haven't paid for advertising. We just pay people. So it's proven. So it's the value of understanding what humanity is and how we're constructed and how we're connected, that if we all work together, we all work to create value, it's circular, and that circular economy is the key.
So I think it's incredible what Greek House has been able to do over the past number of days. We've been able to bring together quantum dots through my dear friend, Professor Gabriel, and the Regenesis, and Dr. Barbara. And I got to learn from Mikkel from Sweden regarding how important it is for us to support women in sports and sports teams that are supporting young women, because this isn't just business, it's impact. And why our bodies matter, because what we are passing on to our children, they will be inheriting. That life is not just about money, it is also about having fun, giving back, making a difference. So I would encourage you over these days, what was your takeaway? Mine was when you put yourself around wise men, wise women, and people like you, it's at that moment we gain true wisdom. Irene, I would like to thank you, and I would like to thank the Greek House for their kindness. Alfonso, you've been absolutely amazing. Konstantinos, I don't know where you are, but thank each and every one of you and my panelists.
Thank you, Dustin.
I want to thank Dustin Plantholt, because he's one of the most amazing person I ever met, of willingness, strong person, positive. He's such a nice, it's a big honor to have you as my friend and to work with your friends. And I have to tell you that without you, we would not be able to be here. Thank you so much for everything, Dustin.
All right, well, that's a wrap, everybody, for at least for this panel. Thank you, thank you, thank you from my heart to yours. Hopefully see you next year.
Konnichiwa, my friends.